and how many of the men have sort of self-selected out? Is that if you could get all of the men in, would it look like that, or are you getting a sort of...
First of all, the program's volunteer. Many of you might have seen Thriller done in a prison in the Philippines. That is now considered a human rights violation. All the men in that prison are forced to dance. They're forced to dance for hours. They're forced to dance with no shoes on concrete. So as a human rights issue, you can't force an entire prison population to dance. But if I could, they would. And most of them would love it, and it would be life-altering for a good number of them. There are about 800 men in this facility, and probably 150 have gone through the dance program in the last 10 years. That's a very small amount. The most we've ever had at any given time was about 14, 15 men. Right now we currently have about 9, and all of a sudden a miracle happened. The guys told me yesterday we have 8 men on a waiting list. Oh. And I am going to strike while the iron's hot. I said you get them there Friday before they change their mind. I think this would work on a large scale. Dance and philosophy, the way that I present it, I think it would work on a large scale. But of course I don't get paid, and I'm retiring this year. And because of a lot of things that were spoken about before, because our system is based on punishment, more than it's based on rehabilitation or redemption, in my opinion, the things that are funded aren't necessarily the ones that would work the best. I would, when I retire, go to a prison somewhere in New York, even up here in Clinton, 5 days a week, and make this my job, if I can make a living out of it. But unfortunately, it's not valued, and it should be. Let me just say one more thing. There's a book that was very recently came out. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it talks about something very interesting involving incarcerated people. It said that after 9/11, there was less post-traumatic stress disorder than in any other tragedy. And the most at Katrina, the most post-traumatic stress disorder. And these two things were studied. And what was found out was that in Katrina, because people couldn't run, because they couldn't move, because there was a flood, because they were stuck on rooftops, they suffered mental illness 10 times more worse than people who had been traumatized at 9/11, because they could physically move. And what is the main aspect of being locked up? Not having physical movement. Now I want to say, in Deb King's behalf, Jean, my friend now, that Woodburn is exceptional in terms of programming. I think she was modest. I think there are very few idle prisoners at Woodburn Correctional, probably only the older population. And the men tell me that it's the jewel of the crown, that they want to be at Woodburn because of programming. But I'm going to tell you what I have discovered in my whole experience doing my entire career. Every single thing depends on the consciousness of the individual doing it. That's why things vary from prison to prison. If the superintendent is a human being, if the superintendent cares about the men, that prison can be almost like a monastery in terms of people studying and changing. If it is run by people who don't care, it's going to be totally different. So one thing that I would add to what you said is, how are we training superintendents? How are we training program people? How are we training parole commissioners who decide who gets out and who doesn't? What kind of inspiration do they have to be in this for humanitarian reasons, to care about the men? And that varies, completely depend on the consciousness of the individual. And I just want to say to these two individuals, I am so moved to be able to listen to the both of you, because this is not common in corrections, to find people that are doing what these people have done. And it's just a privilege to be here. I don't know how I got here. I'm not as smart as either one of you.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of sweep